Assalamu alaikum. Before I start talking, we've been sitting for a long time, so I just want to play a little game. I need 2 volunteers from the crowd. Any 2 random volunteers? Little game. Another random volunteer. All right, come on, come up. Come on up here. Stand right here. Stand facing each other. All right, facing each other, facing each other. So the game we're going to play has only one rule. There's a red line here, and the person who convinces the other person to cross the red line wins. That's the only rule. If you convince her to cross the line, you win. If you convince her to cross the line, you win. What will you tell her to convince her to cross the line?
Be strong. Use your strengths. Use your strengths.
There's an iPad behind the line, over the line.
So you try to bribe her to cross the line. That's a good thing. That's a good thing. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Now the real answer to that question is, you tell the person, if you cross the red line, I will cross the red line, and then we'll both win. See, that's the difference between real life and competitive sports. In competitive sport, we believe that there has to be only one winner. But in real life, we can all win together. And I'll try to explain this later. The reason I decided to talk about racism today is because 4 months ago, I was chilling on the Nile Street with around 15 of my friends, UFK students, people that society considers to be educated people and the future of our country. And they were talking about politics. You know, UFK students love talking about politics, religion, and all that. So I said, let's see what these, educated people have to say about racism. And so I decided to start, a conversation about racism. They were all saying beautiful things until this one guy asked a question. He said, what if a man from southern Sudan, who happens to be a Muslim, well-educated, and has a decent job, what if this man proposes to your sister? Will you allow it? 14 out of the 15 guys who were sitting, they said no. And they insisted, they said this has nothing to do with racism. So that brings me to a question, like, do people understand what racism is? A statistics that we did in 12 schools throughout Khartoum, 12 high schools. We've been working with high school kids about racism, doing workshops. 80% of our high school students do not know anything about racism. They do not know what racism means. But once you explain it to them, once you say racism is this, that, and the third, and you give them examples of racism, they all click. They say, oh, I know this is happening, but I just didn't know that it has a name. So it shows you that this is a big problem that we live in every day, but we don't have a name for it. That means we cannot point to it as a problem and solve it. So the question is there racism in Sudan? Is there racism in Sudan? You guys want to answer it? Okay. But the average person, before we continue, let's define racism, all right? Racism is views, practices, and actions reflecting a belief that each members of the same race share certain attributes that make this race collectively as a whole less desirable, more desirable, inferior, or superior. It's like when you say black people are thieves. That's it. You close in the door, you're saying black people are thieves. White people are this. This is racism when you generalize. All right. So to answer the question, is there racism in Sudan? What we'll do is, instead of saying yes or no, you guys already said yes, but that my presentation will be over, so we still have to do this. To answer the question, we'll look at racism and what it does to an individual and what it does to society, and then we'll look at the Sudanese individual and the Sudanese society and see if there are traces of racism. So first we'll talk about stereotypical racism. Stereotyping is when you generalize something. Just like I said, black people are thieves. You see one black thief, you say, oh, black people are thieves. This is stereotypical racism. So what stereotypical racism does is that it reinforces the stereotypes. For example, we continue with the thief thingy. If, let's say, we have a tribe called Tribe X, and Tribe X is known to be a tribe of thieves. So what we'll see in the streets, if a lady is walking by, she sees a kid from Tribe X. He hasn't stolen anything yet, he's still a kid. She says, oh, that's the Tribe X kid, so I'm going to cling on to my back because I know what he's trying to do. He's trying to steal my purse. So this Tribe X kid goes and sits on the public transportation, and the man sitting next to him is like, oh, Tribe X kid sitting next to me, I need to check my pocket every 2 minutes to make sure that my wallet is still there. So this kid is being treated like a thief before he steals anything. And if anything is missing, society accuses him of being a thief. So society actually pushes this guy towards being a thief. And if we look at the Sudanese society, we have a lot of stereotypes. One of the stereotypes that we have is about the Shaggy people. Is anybody here Shaggy? Raise your hand if you're Shaggy. It's okay, we love Shaggy people. It's okay to be proud of yourself as long as you don't think you're better than anybody else. That's not racism. So Shaggy, one stereotype that we have about Shaggy people is that they're cheap. Some people say Shaggy people don't like giving anything. So let's look at a kid who's born to a Shaggy family. This guy is born and society treats him like he's cheap. Somebody wants, like, for example, if I want to make a phone call, I don't have credit. This guy's sitting in the middle of Shaggy. So I comes like, do you have credit? She'll say no. I was like, oh, he's Shaggy. Do you have credit? So this guy, so I'm giving him an excuse for being cheap. I'm like, you're Shaggy, it's okay, you don't have to be generous. If he does something nice, I'm like, oh my God, this Shaggy person, he actually invited me for a drink. I don't know how it happened. So what we're doing is we're not giving him a chance to be a generous person because we're giving him an excuse for being cheap. And we're not actually encouraging him to do any kind deed. So this reinforces the stereotype. It makes him more and more cheap. And this can be seen in our society. One of the things that racism causes is what we call self-hatred. When a person is constantly subjected to racism, they start to question themselves. They start to hate themselves. It's like, oh, I'm black. Maybe there's something wrong with my color because people are making fun of me. My hair is nappy. There's something wrong with nappy hair. And then you become embarrassed of who you are. And we can see this in the Sudanese society. Some of our sisters, they bleach in their skin with toxic chemicals because society tells them that if you become white, if you behave like white people, then you become a better person. And so you see, a Sudanese person goes to Egypt, he stays in Egypt for 2 months, and he comes back as an Egyptian. He stays in Saudi Arabia, comes back as a Saudi Arabian, because we don't have a reason to be proud of ourselves because we have racism within ourselves. So if you look at if you consider self-hatred, and you look at the Sudanese society, you see a lot of self-hatred. One of the things that racism does is that it creates more racism, what we call reverse racism. And reverse racism is when somebody's being racist towards you, and you don't want to hate yourself, so you say, hey, I'll just hate you, and I'll become racist towards you, and this will create a head-on collision. And that can be seen in the African-American struggle. It led to the rise of militant groups. You have the Black Panthers. The Black Panthers is a militant group. When the average African-American was straightening his hair and lightening his skin, the Black Panthers, they were growing afros and taking the AK-47s out, and then that created more violence. The white people call them niggers, they call them wiggers. You call me chocolate, I call you vanilla. And then it just became a conflict within the society. So racism leads to more racism. And we can see this in our society here. Some tribes, they never get along here in Sudan because one tribe might have started this and became racist against this tribe, and now they're racist against each other, and this leads to nowhere. So what is being done to fight racism in Sudan? Well, I'm actually here to talk about a group of people. I'm very honored to be a member of this group. We're called the Unity House. And what we do is, shout out to the Unity House, big round of applause. And the Unity House is a group of artists, musicians, writers, and what we do is we fight racism through art. We fight racism through art. We perform at open mic nights, we perform at poetry events, and we try to fight racism through poetry and through writing. We also conduct workshops. We have conducted 12 workshops throughout the capital in high schools. With high school children, who 80% of them don't know what racism is. We have conducted 5 workshops in Ad-Damazin and in Babanusa, and we have conducted a workshop for poets in Ad-Damazin. So how this works? Why do we use art to fight racism? The thing with art is that art is subtle. Art is easy to accept. Like you saw the play by Shawaria earlier, like they're trying to send you a very deep message, and you just see it in a form of entertainment. It doesn't have to be real. So that's what we do. In performances, we create scenarios. In workshops, what we do is we usually work with artists, so we get them to feel comfortable first, and then we start talking about racism, and then we create scenarios. One of the workshops we were working on, poets from Damazin. This one girl at the beginning of the workshop, she introduced herself. She said, my name is So-So, and I'm a war poet. I said, what is a war poet? She said, I write poetry to provoke people, encourage people to fight the rebels. That was her idea. After 5 days, and after the workshop finished, she performed the piece. And in that piece, she was talking about building a house with her lover. Her and her lover building a house. So he called her and said, what is this that you're talking about? Like, what does this have to do with racism? She said, my lover is the rebels that I'm fighting, and the house is Sudan that I'm trying to build. So the whole idea changed because we just got together and we started talking and we started creating scenarios. And the power of scenario is that sometimes you don't know something is wrong until we put you in that position. I was doing a workshop in Abu Bakr al-Amir, a high school in Durman for girls. And this one girl, she said a man proposed to my sister and we rejected him because of his tribe. And my sister loved this man very much, and then she got depressed and she dropped out of school for 2 years now. And I said, is this right? She couldn't tell me it was wrong. So she said, we are a tribe, we have our traditions, we can't give our daughter to anybody. So I tried to switch things a little bit. I said, what if the man that you love comes to propose to you and your family rejects him because of his tribe? So she was quiet. So then I tried to flip it again. I said, is your mom and dad from the same tribe? She said, yes. I said, let's assume they were not from the same tribe. I said, is your dad a good person? She said, yes. I said, does your dad deserve to be rejected? She said, no. So I said, what if your dad came and proposed to your mom, but then he was rejected because of his tribe? Would that be fair? And she said, no, that's not fair. So what we do is we mix things a little bit, and then we put them in positions that they're not in, and then in that way we can change the society. One other thing that art does is art gives you a lot of options. Like, I can talk about racism, or I can talk about the things that racism does. And one of my favorite topics is to talk about self-hate. If I feel like a group of people hate themselves because people are being racist towards them, try to make them feel better. So to end this, I'm going to share a piece of poetry that I wrote for all Africans, because I believe Africans are very beautiful people and they deserve to be happy with who they are. And this piece is called Africa. So Africa, please wake up, your history was stolen. Some of it survived, but still it was taught wrong. We wasn't taught about them beautiful African beings, them African kings that traveled all across the globe doing African things. African rhythm, African words over African beats, African knowledge still seeping through them African streets. African eyes, open up and realize, or sit back and watch as the melanin dries. It hurts me to see other Africans cry. Africans, why? Why Africans die over hunger while the colonizers eating our pie? Africa's not poor, that's an African lie. Black gold still glitters on the African sky. Best believe these facts from this African guy. Thank you.